Hi guys, how are you? As some of you may know, I have recently completed my PhD and I have been asked a couple of times to share this experience. So I wanted to make this video and I hope to help or inspire those who are considering doing PhD or those who are already in the process of doing it or those who just wonder what it's like. So I started it in September 2017, and in September 2019, I already submitted my final thesis. So it took me 4 semesters or 2 years to finish writing my thesis, and it took me another 2 semesters or another year to wait for my Viva, the day when I could finally defend my work. So from the beginning of my PhD journey until the very end of it, it took me 3 years. Considering that I was also working mainly full-time during my writing, I often get a question like, how did you manage to do that, work full-time and complete your PhD research in a relatively short period of time? And let me tell you straight away, it's not something extraordinary or you need to have special skills to be able to do that. It's absolutely doable. So let's get straight to the point, how I managed to complete my PhD in the shortest time possible. First of all, before even starting it, I made sure that I really wanted to do PhD and I didn't just decide to embark on this journey because I was feeling bored or because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my life or simply for the sake of getting a PhD. No, no, no. And for this reason, I had to find what it is that I'm really interested in. And for this reason, I had to select an area I was truly interested in, and ideally something that mattered, something that could contribute to a change in the world. And I know it may sound like a cliche, change in the world, but cliche or not, if you truly believe that your work can contribute to the change in the world, that makes you passionate about it. And passion is something that gets you going. And then, in the moments when you feel down, disappointed, frustrated with how things are along your PhD journey, which most likely will happen, knowing that your work matters will remind you why you started it in the first place, and it will give you inspiration and strength to keep going. For example, in my case, I had 3 major pillars that I wanted my research to revolve around. The first one is veganism. I'm vegan, and it is only my hope and aspiration that veganism continues to grow. And if I could contribute to it in any way, that's all that matters. The second pillar, the second big area of my interest is environment and environmental protection. In fact, my master's degree dealt with the environmental policy. And the third pillar is language. My first degree is from the Linguistic University, and I thought if I could connect language to my PhD, that would be great. By identifying these major interests of mine, I came across ecolinguistics, and it was a perfect match because it studies linguistics, ecology, with the key concepts of language and environment and the relationship between the two. So what I did, I decided to apply the concept of ecolinguistics to veganism. You see where I'm getting here? I've got my major interests figured out and how I could focus on them in my PhD. To make it even more practical and meaningful, I decided to study vegan campaigns that aim to encourage people to look at non-human animals not as food or objects, but as sentient living beings. I found something I was really interested in, and by doing this PhD research, I believed I could find more ways in which we can use visual and linguistic features not to create a divide between human and non-human animals, but to create a harmonious relationship between us. Hence, encourage more people to become vegan. And this is where I saw a potential change I could contribute to. Now, the second point I wanted to mention is that academic and language skills matter. You are going to do a lot of reading, a lot of research before you even start writing. And once you start writing, you are going to use your academic English or language you're writing in. I'm not saying that you have to master your academic language before you start doing your PhD, but the better you are at it, the easier it will be for you to write well and fast. Now, the third point, make a plan. How long are you planning to spend doing your PhD? What is the minimum requirement at your university? In some PhD programs, you have to complete at least 6 semesters to be able to graduate. In others, it can be 8 semesters. It depends. Based on my university requirements, I decided from the very beginning that I was going to finish writing my thesis within 2 years. So all of the major steps like proposal defense, candidature defense, had to fit within that timeline. The Gantt chart, a chart that outlined my schedule, my plan, the steps I needed to accomplish in order to complete my work. It was very detailed, down to months. And like this, it gave me a very nice visual representation of what I have ahead of me. And I discussed it with my supervisors and made my intention clear that I was going to complete within 2 years, complete writing my thesis. And after discussing, we both agreed what was ahead of us and what needed to be done and when it needed to be submitted if I wanted to stick to my schedule. In this way, we had a rough deadline to which we were both heading. Now, of course, it was mainly for me because I had to be accountable to myself. If I had, for example, a proposal defense scheduled in March, then it was completely my responsibility to be ready for that by February because I had to submit also before March, right? Things like date change due to some unforeseen circumstances on the university side were not under my control, but my responsibility was to do my best and be ready. So make a plan and stick to it. And here comes the next point. How to stick to the plan. Discipline. Get organized. Schedule your writing. PhD was like a job for me. Unpaid job though. When you have a job, you know you have to show up at certain hours, deliver your work, do your best, and it doesn't matter whether it's a part-time job or a full-time job, right? You can't just say, oh, I don't feel like working today, and repeat the same thing a few days in a row. I treated my PhD like work. Every day I would read or write. Depending on my work schedule, I would schedule my writing. So for example, I would write from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and then from 8 to 9 p.m. Or I would sometimes work part-time till 2 p.m. and then have lunch, and after that from 3 to 6 p.m. I would write or read, whatever I had to do. But I treated it like work. No matter how I felt, I showed up and did it. It was discipline. I actually had my laptop with me all the time, just in case I would think or feel like writing outside. And speaking of which, I know it's not everyone's case, but in my case, I found myself being way more productive in writing when I'm outside. So whether it's in the library or a coffee shop or even park. When I traveled, I would also bring my laptop with me, and sometimes I would write on the plane, on the train, on the bus, whenever I had the opportunity to do that. I know it may sound like a lot, but there is no point, seriously, in dragging your PhD over the years because, after all, it is just you and you alone in this journey. And no matter how interested and passionate you are about the subject, it can get overwhelming. The writing can get overwhelming. Researching can get overwhelming. So the more determined you are from the very beginning to get completely, fully absorbed in it, the faster and more productively you move along. Now, the next point. Establish a good rapport with your supervisors. And I didn't mention anything about supervisors at the beginning on purpose. Why? Because even if you do have an amazing supervisor who supports you 100% along the way, who is super helpful, doesn't mean that your PhD journey will be smooth. It's first and utmost your work, your dedication, your determination, your passion, your work. And this is why I outlined the points above first. Now about supervisors. It is important to understand that a supervisor is not your parent or a primary school teacher to put all their effort in your success, chase you, check your homework with you all the time, make sure you're doing fine. No, not even close in most cases. Chances are you are not their only PhD student that they have to supervise. And on top of that, they have their own responsibilities, plus the academic work like articles and publishing papers, articles on a regular basis. So if you haven't heard from your supervisor for a while, chances are that they're busy. You're the one who has to get in touch with them. Request a meeting, schedule a phone call, video call. There are so many ways these days without even having to travel to meet each other in person. It is obvious that you cannot complete your PhD without having a supervisor. And after all, you have to go through such mandatory stages like proposal defense, candidature defense, and supervision and guidance is needed. If you're serious about completing your PhD successfully and not drag it into years, it's important to keep regular contact with your supervisors. And of course, it doesn't mean sending them good morning and good night messages every day. It just simply means reminding them about yourself, what you have done, how your progress is, where you feel stuck, and so on. It is you who has to put effort and show dedication and determination. It was me who was looking to meet my supervisors as regularly as I could. And if my meeting got postponed, for example, I wasn't like, oh, thankfully I don't have to meet my supervisor. Oh, what a relief. No, it wasn't like this. I immediately rescheduled the meeting and in the meantime just got back to my writing. If there was an area that I felt like I was stuck and I couldn't continue without discussing with my supervisor, okay, I just diverted my attention to something else in my PhD. There's always something to do, always something to read or add. So don't get frustrated. Just do something else and wait till your supervisor gets back to you or wait for your upcoming meeting. But don't wait forever. If you haven't heard from them, make sure you remind that you have a meeting or there is something that you need to discuss with them, something that you feel you are stuck in and you absolutely need their guidance. And here's the thing. When they see that you are active, committed, dedicated, do your best, and you're passionate about your work, they will try to be there for you. Now, the next thing I wanted to mention is network. Connect with experts in your field. Your supervisors may not necessarily be the experts in the field that you are researching. And even if they are, it is always a good idea to connect with those who do a lot of work or study the area that you are studying right now, to get a fresh perspective, to get new ideas, to probably ask for advice. And it could be that you were waiting to discuss something with your supervisors, but you got the answer or clarified the idea just by discussing with other experts in the field. Or not just discussing, by attending a seminar, a webinar, conference, a workshop, and so on. As soon as I came across ecolinguistics, I got in touch with one of the leading figures in this area, Dr. Aaron Stiebe, who I also got a chance to meet at the conference where I gave a talk. Of course, you should also take advantage of social media these days. Follow accounts of experts, professionals, in the field where you're working, where you are doing your research right now. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, there are so many platforms these days. Now, something important, publications. In many cases, you are supposed to have 1 or 2 publications before you are allowed to graduate, which means that even if you have completed your thesis and done your Viva, but haven't written and published your articles, you won't be able to graduate. And in many cases, you aren't even allowed to do Viva until you have your publications sorted. So if you're planning to complete your PhD and graduate in a relatively short time, you should start writing your articles during the second year of PhD or even earlier than that, because the process of publication is a very long process. It's one thing to write, but then you submit to a journal and you wait to hear from the journal, and it might take a month or 2, and it could be a rejection, which means that you need to do the whole process all over again. Edit, resubmit, or submit to another journal. Wait for another month or 2 months. So you see where I'm getting? In my case, it took literally a year for me to get my publications sorted. I had a few rejections along the way and it was frustrating, but what could you do? Just edit, address the comments, resubmit, or submit to another journal. Last, but certainly not least, take care of your mental health. I mentioned earlier that PhD is a journey where it's mainly just you, and it can get too much sometimes. It can get lonely. It's okay, and it's necessary to take a break. Go away for a weekend. Take a week off. As much as you need to feel better. As much as you need reasonably. Taking a year off won't bring you a lot of good. Why? Because it will take you forever to get back to what you were actually working on before taking that year off. So I'm talking about the reasonable amount of time. Find the ways to inspire you. Like I mentioned before, for me, that would be a change in location. Whenever I found a new place to write, I would feel more productive, more inspired, happier. And I would also remind myself of why I started it in the first place. And remind yourself of how far you have come. I really like this quote. You didn't come this far to come this far. I hope you have enjoyed this video and found it useful for yourselves. Please let me know if there is anything specific you'd like to know about my PhD experience. And wow, this sun is so bright. I love it. It's the sunset time right now, so it took me a while to record this video. So I'll see you next time. Bye!